All right. Give us a countdown, Mark. We're ready to go. All right, welcome to Season 2 of the Tony Mack Show. We got a new episode that we're putting in. We're calling it the Whiteboard Wednesdays. And what we're doing is sitting down every Wednesday with our coaching staff on different topics that we'll put on the whiteboard and discuss and have an interactive conversation for people watching as well as for ourselves. You know, we sit around here and do this anyway, so we may as well do it so everyone can see what it is that we do and how we do it and what happens up here at AI and just give people a general idea of what kind of basketball minds are sitting around the table here. So what I want to do is just take a quick second and allow you guys to introduce yourself. These are guys you're going to be seeing sitting around here. We're missing one, Brandon, who's had dental surgery today, but he'll be back with the training aspect because I think he hates coaching. So we'll definitely include him in the mix
Sounds right.
going forward. So I'm going to start across the table. My name's Pat. Just give a quick update where they can follow you. In terms of watching this even going forward as well.
In terms of catching this live, they can catch me at Patty Fouls on Instagram. I'm not a big user of Twitter, but it's the same handle, Patty Fouls. I'll be posting the live link every week just for you to catch up. And just otherwise, it's my first year coaching here in the OSBA. It's been a great season, tough in regards to working with a development group, but also very rewarding as well. I think taking a step back and being humbled by the type of season that we had. So it was really good.
Good stuff. Next up, Jeremy.
And I'm Jeremy. You can follow this live on. I'm not using mine, so I'm using my boss's. So you can find it live on Tony_Mac Show. If you want to follow me on IG Live. Born and raised Compton, California, first year in Canada. Getting ready for our Bounce EYBL season. Reflecting back on the year we just had, it was rewarding, it was humbling, it was more than I ever thought it would be. And allowed me to grow in more ways than I thought I would. So at the end of the day, I'm present where I am, I'm enjoying myself, and I can't complain at all.
Stuff. Next up, Manny.
How you doing, Golf? First year coach here at the Institute. I'm assistant coach for Orange Grove Prep and AI. Like I said, first year here, spent the past 4 years in the States, most recently at Oral Roberts University. Blessed and fortunate to be back home and just enjoying the ride.
Good. And I'm Tony from the Tony Mack Show. What do we want to do? We want to get right into this and really just take you through a whiteboard discussion, and every week it's going to change, and we'll update the topics. And if anyone out there has any topics, feel free to mention it at the bottom in the comments on our YouTube page, and we'll sit down and try to add that to next week's show. But again, roughly every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m., we will go live with our Whiteboard Wednesdays. Our first topic, I think this is one where we got a very unique perspective around the table, having Jeremy born and raised in the U.S., and then Manny being down there for college basketball and coaching as well. I think it's a debate that goes right across the world, so to speak, but more impactful probably in the U.S., where we see such a lack of shot clock. So our first topic that we want to kind of go around the table and talk about, what is the impact of having a shot clock or not having a shot clock, and do you believe that there should be a shot clock? Pat?
I think in general, having a shot clock obviously speeds up the game. I think it forces the kids to make decisions at a lot faster pace, which I think in general is a lot more beneficial for them rather versus not having one. I think also with having the shot clock in the games, it also allows them to push themselves a lot harder. There isn't the time to just bring up the ball lackadaisically and really taking your time. And sometimes a lot of my past experiences being, whether it's coaching or even playing AAU basketball, there's been times where teams just come up the court and you watch them literally just pass back and forth at half for almost like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes at a time. So I think, that's where, not having one can kind of really take away from the game, take away from the players and allowing them to really develop their skill set and push at the time that you're given. Because once they get to a certain level, all of a sudden you have to push at a faster pace. It's for them. It's hard to, I think, adjust to for most players, and I think that's really my intake on it.
And what do you think? 24 seconds, 30 seconds? What should the shot clock be?
Even NCAA, man, I'm a 24-second shot clock guy. I think even 30 is too much. Maybe I'm a little on both sides, but I think even from 35 what they started with, that was ridiculous. So yeah, I'm really on the side of 24 seconds.
Jay Pope. This one's going to be interesting because this comes from a guy that was born and raised in Compton, played down there, obviously played college basketball, so you're used to the shot clock. But most of our issues come when we do travel to the States and there is no shot clock. What's your perception?
If you're a federation, a conference, a league, or what have you, and you don't have a shot clock, I feel like you're doing the kids a disservice. In California, we have a shot clock. I have a few friends that play basketball like in the Midwest now, and Ohio, for example, and they don't have a shot clock. And they've told me stories where like they're the better team, and the team will go up and they holding the ball, and it's 6-2. And like, what are you doing? Like, and I just think as I've gotten older and realizing that you're not playing anymore, and you look at it differently, you become like we've become guardians of the game in a sense. And it's like, fam, what are you doing to our game, bro? Like, you're just out there just holding the ball. Like that's what we're doing. And on top of and moving past that, I just feel like kids are rewarded. Kids want scholarships. Kids want to be professionals. There are shot clocks in those situations.
There you go.
So it's like you go from this high school league, wherever that is, that doesn't have a shot clock, to now even if you play on the EYBL circuit, there's a 24-second shot clock. So you're going from no shot clock to 24-second shot clock. Like, and I think there's a gray area within that for a kid's development. Like, you're just removing it and just throwing them in. It's like, like you just hopping in the deep end with, like, dog, use the steps first. Like, and I kind of think that's where it is.
How did you feel? Because I know we had conversations early on where you were like, man, what is this 24-second thing? And then the 24-second, 14-second reset. You're like, bro, like, this is different. And, I think you're of a different opinion now. Even when I sit there and watch college basketball with you, you're like, man, 30 seconds is way too long. What's your opinion coming from college at 30, jumping into 24 seconds here in Canada, and then sitting there watching a 30-30 reset?
A 30-30 reset is so long. 24, I think I've grown accustomed to it, and just even in your it forces you to think differently as far as how you view the game and like what you teach and how you teach it. 24 seconds, you shoot it on reset, you get 14. So it's like, so what are you doing as a team, as a collective, when it hits 14? Like, what are you doing? Are you just letting them play jungle ball, or is like, do you have some script to it? And then watching college games, like going 30 seconds. Some teams use 26 of the 30 before they get a shot. Like Virginia, for example, who pack lines you in and they can come down, make you guard the whole 26. Then they offer the rebound and they get a whole another 30. Like, so being in it and then watching it is like, man, it's long. But the NIT, Washington played NIT last year. We're in the NCAAs this year. The NIT adopts new rules for the NIT. And for this year, 30 seconds, reset to 20 was one of them. They're also using FIBA. And some other rules that I kind of liked. But I think, I guess I get it being that college kids are amateurs. So 30 is, I guess, more of time versus the NBA where they're pros. So 24, I guess I get that. But the rebound reset at 30 again is like, it's now in my mind become like, that's out of control.
I got to throw it to Manny and not kind of stay on the shot clock, but not ask the same question. But how does it impact your ability to never had a 30-30?
Right.
But how does that impact your game planning, your end of game stuff, your sideline out of bounds, and just your ability to coach with those a shorter clock and a shorter clock?
It most definitely helps you as a coach in the regards that in the reset, now you're knocking off roughly 10 seconds from what you have. And so if late clock is usually around 13 to 12 seconds, you're almost at late clock on the reset. So it allows us in practice planning to really, prepare for those situations where, what do we want on that reset? Are we just going with a flat, we bring the big up, what are we trying to get out of that 14? So I think in terms of preparation and coaching, it definitely helps you grow. And I didn't know, when I came back, I didn't know we had that either.
Right.
So when we came back, it's kind of a surprise to both of us. But in terms of that, preparation, I think it definitely helps.
I think it forces you as a coach to execute more, especially from a sideline out of bounds perspective.
Yeah.
Right, and then once again, like Manny touched on, it's it's a limited space of time that you have to really score the ball. So it gives you options, and that's where for us as coaches this year, we put ourselves in situations with our team. I think it benefited us. Obviously, from the win-loss category, no, but overall our guys developed, and I think they learned a lot this year just from being in this kind of situation, this foundation. Yeah.
Last question in regards to shot clock, but do you feel that the 24-14 reset and your ability to coach those two scenarios impacts the quality of those players when they move on to college basketball and then having more time?
I think it does. I think it's one of those things where it's like I'd rather have gone through it and get in a situation where I kind of – it's like it's good that they deal with it now, and when they go to college, they won't be dealing with 24-14, but being that they can react and conform and transform their minds to be able to navigate that space and then go to a space where it's more time where they have to think and that they'll just be even better going from 24-14 to 30-30 just because they've navigated with less time on a different playing field and against better players when they move on.
And even that, like, if you look at the shot clock period, I believe there's like 8 or 9 states in America that use shot clock. And so off the top of my head, I know like Michigan uses it, New York, and Cali for sure. And just those 3 states alone, like, you get some pretty good college players out of those 3 states alone.
Yeah.
And then you throw Canada in the mix. Recently, we've been producing a lot of good college basketball players and even professionals. So I think just that whole notion in general, I definitely think it just benefits.
Around the table, yes or no? College basketball switch. Should they switch to a 24-14?
In my opinion, yes, they should go to 24-14.
Not 24-14.
What is it?
I like this 30. I like this notion of this 30-20 thing.
30-20?
Same. Like
30-20? Yeah. All right. Next topic up. Again, staying on the topic of high school basketball and college. A lot of changes this year in the landscape of both college basketball and recruiting as a whole. Let's dig into basically the changes that impact the recruiting calendar and what impact it really has on high school athletes and what you think is ahead for these athletes, these teams, and college coaches as a whole. I'm going to start it this way, Manny.
I think the biggest thing for me when I saw these changes was I was more concerned about the guys that are at the low to mid-major level. Yeah. I feel like a kid that's recruited at the Power 5 high major level, you're always going to get your opportunity just because, you built that platform for yourself. My thing is with the camp invites that go out, obviously the top guys are receiving invites, but what with the lower tier guys? So I feel like it may take away opportunities for lower tier guys, but then again, none of us really know because it's our first time doing it, But in terms of the new changes, I think for coaches, I was on the phone with a coach a few days ago, and they took away the Vegas weekend, for instance. That's 150 gyms apparently that coach can all just navigate at once, and now you take that whole weekend away and just kind of leaves a void, So I think it'll be really interesting.
Jay?
Like I know I talk about like being guardian of the game, and I think now this topic more so affects the culture. Like you say, we take away the Vegas deal. Like since I was a child, going to Las Vegas, that second and third weekend of July,
It was something.
It's an annual thing.
It was almost like a.
It's a basketball. It's an annual thing.
I mean, when you go back and just look at the history and the legacy of just Vegas and the level of basketball in AU that was played in July in Las Vegas, you as a kid look forward to going and watching those older kids play because you knew they were going to be there. And I think that really hurts. But
so on top of that, it's like so that notion, and then it's like as a kid, it's like man, I used to love like going circus. Circus. I get the hoop, and then I go to Circus Venture Dome. I think
we were at the Safari or the Sahara or something. It was always something that was like under $80.
Yeah. And then even deeper, I feel like changes were made that affected more than just, I guess, like that one rule or whatever that line was that they wanted to change. Because I think I read something when it first came out that the city of Vegas then would lose like $600,000 or something. So it was like people, like regular human beings, like look forward to these events, like they work these events every year. Like that's income, that's gym rentals, and et cetera, et cetera. It just provides so much for people outside of just for college coaches, and I just think it affects the overall culture. And again, like Bob Huggins doesn't find Javon Carter within these new rules, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's
even to build on that, it's like, you know, if you're somebody that, let's say you're the man behind the Fab 48, you know, all these years of building that great platform, you put in the work and the time, the startup, and all of a sudden it's just, you can't do it no more. You know, all the years of work and, you know, but just decide.
And you know the good thing about that is, and I'm not going to say it's good that they took it away, but those two guys, they're going to find a way to get something done still.
Yeah, Dinos and Gary.
With Dinos and Gary Charles. So, you know, those are guys that have created a culture and a platform for a lot of people to be successful.
AAU legends, literally.
Absolutely.
I think in terms of, like, you know, the top ranked players, you know, at the end of the day, they're going to find a home regardless of what, you know, we want to limit on their, you know, their limit of timing towards getting recruited. I really do agree with what Manny was saying. Like, you know, if I was going to go first, I was going to say the same thing. It's tougher for the less talented players or the players that are going to be going mid-major or low-major. I think that just that window to get picked up puts a lot of more pressure on the athletes. Because, you know, I think it's beneficial in the sense of, you know, that you have something to work towards. And, you know, through that time, you know, where do you want to be by the time you get to the actual, you know, your sessions or whatever it is that you'll be playing in. But I think it puts a lot of pressure on the kids to, you know, show out. And there's only a small space to actually do that. So that's where I think there's the positives and negatives towards the new recruiting rules. But I think, you know, for the mid-major guys, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But for guys that are, you know, high-major guys, they're going to find a way to get it done regardless, just based off of name and just talent alone.
I'm going to throw a couple questions in regards to this topic around. And when you look at it, does the NCAA come back and say the window's too small, college coaches want more? Or do they keep it short for a long period of time?
Well, I think it's like first year you kind of see how you know things go, and then from there you kind of make your adjustments. Almost like us as a you know, in our facility here, you know, we got to make adjustments. Our first year doing a development model, and now all of a sudden, you know, how are we going to make it better in order to actually compete even more in the OSBA? So I think in terms of with the NCAA, you know, just from my intake, you know, first year, see how it goes.
Test case.
Yeah, exactly. If it's beneficial towards, you know, all parties, then hey, keep it going. But obviously, I think, you know, things change through time and everyone makes adjustments. Clearly, we're seeing it this year.
I'm gonna throw it to you, being an American guy sitting here. How much impact do you think it has and puts onus back on high school basketball, especially in America? And what is the impact of those new recruiting windows that actually then don't benefit the American teams because their schools end a whole lot earlier, in which now it forces those high school coaches. So you think back to your high school coach in Compton, does he keep basketball going until the last day of school now? Because college coaches could come there and watch to help you offset that window that normally that high school coach would tag off the AAU coach and say he's yours now. What's that impact when you're sitting in a Compton gym right now?
I think it's different. I think it changed the narrative for a lot of people. In the fact that, like, I know some high school coaches are actually teachers. The gist of their income comes from teaching, actually. Like, their high school, it's a stipend. So it's like now, like, when they have families, they want to go on vacation, they have these annual trips, now they're forced because they love their kids to try to put an event on or get into an event, or, like, say you had a team of 8 seniors and you got 12 players, like, okay, well, who can you even go take to be watched? Then I think it puts a strain also on the college coaches, because now it's like, well, I'm accustomed to seeing a group of kids as a collective. Now I got to pick and choose what high school I want to go to see one kid. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think it puts a strain on everybody's situation. It was like, I mean, I guess some high school coaches are AAU coaches, so they get it. But some high school coaches are really just high school coaches who are coaches because they are teachers at the school or whatever. You know, like they're not. I don't know. I think they were kind of pushed into this role that all of them don't want to be in. And I would assume and say it's not the majority, but like now, you know, there's some thinking to it that you got to do, and as far as, you know,
A lot more thought process
Yeah.
going into planning for a
Yeah.
season now too. Manny, when you look at these changes, do you sit there and say the NCAA is really trying to force everything back into the high school system and basically try to, we'll say AAU the way we know it. AAU is never going to go away in my opinion, but AAU in the way we know it in terms of, you know, the circuits and those types of things, I think are impacted drastically. Does it get forced back into the high school and put so much more emphasis on the high school basketball coaches and players now?
I really think they're making an intentional intent to, yeah. I think they're trying to do that in regards to even our camps that we look at. You know, they want high school coaches coaching there. Or is it college coaches?
For like what?
Coaching,
Like
For the regional camps.
camps.
We got to look
I
at that.
believe
that's
it
something
was,
we gotta look
it
at.
may be high school. I think I read something about high school, but I may be wrong, because I think I heard something about college too, but
It was ran by Team USA though, so I mean.
right, yeah. But in the fact that the June slot is just for high school guys that are approved, you know, I think it does bring the power back to high school coaches a little more.
For the ones that want to keep going into June.
Exactly, you know, and I don't think everybody, you know, I don't think every high
Yeah,
school
really
coach,
vacation.
like Jay said, like desires to coach up until that point.
Yeah.
But when you give them that time period, you know, naturally, if I was in a college coach, you know, I'd be more drawn to connect to the high school coach because, you know, they're spending more time with them and, you know, obviously influencing their recruitment as well.
Last question on this topic. Probably a little bit harder for you, but does this impact Canadian basketball players as a whole? These changes, the recruiting calendar, the USA basketball selecting who attends these camps, or does it put the onus back on people in Canada to really start reaching out and building relationships and making sure that their kids are invited to those camps?
I think just what you said right there, it puts a lot more onus on us to actually get in touch with these coaches and try, or you know, the camps and try and get our kids invited. Because especially from a Canadian perspective, there's only going to be a handful of guys that are going to get chosen to go to these camps. Versus, you know, in the States, the whole vast majority, I want to say 90 to 95% of that camp is going to be Americans.
American kids.
So I think that's where, you know, it can have a big effect on Canadians.
American side of view, American point of view. I mean, you've been up here now and understand sort of the battles that we go through and obstacles that we have to overcome to participate and just play on that level of playing field. Do you think it hurts, helps, or it's a neutral?
I don't think it helps per se. I wouldn't say it's also. I guess I'm leaning towards kind of neutral. I think it's kind of around the notion of like what we all kind of already know of.
So again,
How?
kind of wait and see approach and
Yeah.
first year and let's see what happens.
Yeah, because I mean, like again, like these coaches, to my knowledge, these coaches are basically, I guess, telling USA basketball like who they want to see.
Yeah.
So I think you have enough of like I want to see this
You got
kid.
players.
The kid is going to be there, but it's like if there's a kid, you
fringe-
have two
fringe guy.
kids, and yeah, you got a Canadian kid, and American kid. It's like, well, you might as well like take the American kid. Like that's what I was thinking it might be. I mean, I don't because everybody's not connected to Canada like that. So you know, for you to have your heartstrings tugged on to pull it, like it's like.
Speaking of heartstrings being tugged on, our next topic is something that we actually sat around here and laughed about quite a bit this year is the whole zone versus man debate. And we could take this one. Really, this could be a topic that you could talk about probably for a whole segment. So I'm going to get some points of view on it, and then I'm gonna end that conversation, and we could come back to it. It's something that we could look at a lot more in detail. But do you think there should be restrictions and regulations on zones, and we're going to keep it from a young age through to high school, and we could add high school being AU and high school. Should there be restrictions on the use of zones, how they're used, or whether or not they should even be used? I'm going to go Jay Pope first.
So
This is
I feel like
coming
this
from a
is-
guy that was
right.
at UW.
So
Go Dogs.
again, to from my bring up until UW, I was still think I'm a big man guy. Like, I'm big on being tough and being prideful about guarding your man, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, being at Washington and Coach Hopkins' first year, like, I literally watched him change an entire culture, a community, a perspective on an entire basketball program at one of the best universities in the world. So for me, like, the zone isn't just like, hey, let's sit in the zone because it's like, it literally changed more than just on-court production. Like, it gave, like, like, those kids were sophomore, like, basically turned the entire team minus the #1 draft pick. And that team went from 9-21 to 21-13. I'm not saying only because of the zone, but the zone had a big
Impact on it.
had a lot to do with just their mentality and how they attacked every game and how they attack practice every day.
Do you feel like the zone is a comfort feeling with who you have defensively, or a philosophy as a team?
A little bit of both. You can't. I don't think Washington or the Syracuses of the world can do it as great as they can without the kind of guys they recruit. The way this played, they definitely recruit to it for sure. And I think everybody recruits to whatever it is that they do. Like, you look at Tony Bennett's teams, they move. There's his guys. They're very well moving laterally. They're disciplined. Like, some of that stuff you can't just get them on campus and teach them. Like, you have to recruit to some of those things, whether it's character, whether it's toughness, like a shooter. Like, you recruit to those things. I think people just think it's different because you're recruiting to play a certain defense versus recruiting to play a certain offense. I like athletic guys versus you like shooters versus you like playmakers. Like, you recruit the defense as well. And I think the very good defensive teams in the nation, they do that. So again, like, I'm a man guy, but I see the benefits in playing his own. Like, I know Coach Hop talks a lot about having a change up. Whether it's you play a lot of zone and you change up and throw man in there, or you play a lot of man and throw zone in there, or you just rock out with zone all the time, or you rock out with man all the time. You don't have to have a change up. Maybe your fastball is just like that. Right. But I think it's a philosophy and recruiting to type of thing that makes the debate as great as it is.
Pat, you do a lot of youth coaching outside of here with kids in provincial and inner city. How would you, or what's your view on using zone at the younger ages? Not even in high school basketball, but
Even like
elementary school, growing up into the point that they come to you here.
I think that, a lot of teams that, especially at an elementary level, that are going to be running zone, I think it kind of touches on what Jeremy was saying when he was bringing in the whole topic of when he was at UW. Is they're not getting a chance to really learn how to, like, guard their man. Like, and it becomes that, let's just sit in a zone to sit in a zone kind of thing. So I think that, especially from, an elementary level, I feel, you can throw in zones here and there to throw in new concepts to open up their mind. Because I think, especially going into high school, it's especially for just a regular level high school, I want to say everyone runs zone. Whether it's a 3-2 or it's a 2-3, very rare, very rare do you see a 1-3-1. But once again, like, I just think that the whole concept of being able to guard your man off the perimeter is kind of getting lost. It's kind of a lost art. And even wanting to stop your man physically from going off on you. Like, a lot of the times we watched it this year, we see certain guys get hot and get going. And don't get me wrong, they're great players, but no one wants to take a challenge and actually try and stay in front of that guy. And that, more or less, leads to your offense, is that energy that you bring behind actually playing a good man-to-man. I think that there is benefits, though, to playing zone. Like I said just earlier, it was you're giving the kids a chance to learn new concepts of defense. And I also feel, just as much as man, it forces you to talk. It forces you to communicate. It forces you to rotate throughout the zone. And it also gives you, instead of just, I guess, well, actually, no, it's kind of a little bit of the same. I might be wrong when with putting this out there, but with like man-to-man, yes, I'm guarding my guy. But then if it goes away from my guy, I'm whether it's I'm in help, I'm in gap. There's two different sides of it. And then if it's zone, I just have an area to really guard. Yeah. And if I need to overhelp because of the rotations, then that's where it comes, right? But that's the ultimate communication. So I think that zone kind of forces kids to talk a little bit more. Where man-to-man, I think there's the talking there, but man-to-man is like, it just generates that energy.
Speaking of that, I know we had a conversation in here. I think it might have even been yesterday or the day before. But do you think that the zone causes players to be lackadaisical in their effort on the court, translating onto the offensive side after sitting in a zone on defense.
Right, and I think it goes a little bit of, I think I have two sides to this, because you look at programs like Baylor and the Syracuse of the world, you know, they run great zone where guys are active, and on the offensive end, you know, they also have great sets as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's funny because I was reading Jay Wright's book just a few days ago, and he actually mentioned on that, he mentioned that they don't really play zone at Nova because he feels like the guys are more passive on the offensive end. You know, he feels like in the zone defense, you know, when you're passing guys on, you know, you're communicating, but feels like on the offense, you know, guys then become passive as well.
Especially because you're working on it in practices, right? And through the
So
zone, you
he
have to move
feels
that
like
ball.
he feels like his guys lose a little bit of aggression, you know. And so, like I said, I think it just comes down to preference because, like I said, the Baylor's a great team that plays a stretch 1-3-1 and the 3-2, you know. But you know they have a great offensive system and rating, you know.
So interesting. I know one of our topics leading up or closing this off is March Madness, and you have Syracuse playing Baylor.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting matchup. Kind of battle of those zones, battle of exactly what you talked about. So I think it's interesting. Best defensive team in college basketball.
Virginia. No. Virginia, hands down.
Best defensive team, college basketball, that uses zone, primarily zone.
The University of Washington Huskies.
I think I would have to go Syracuse with all the success they've had for decades off that 2-3. You know, I think Coach Boeheim really made a 2-3 okay to do in any system because of all the success they built off.
And he's never changed.
You know, he never changed. Yeah. And then the crazy part about it is every team that comes into the Carrier Dome knows what Syracuse is about to do. You know, and they still find success each and every year. So I feel like, you know, they really cemented themselves in that zone and it's worked out great.
I'll go last question on the zone to Jeremy, and I think this is the funniest one is use of 2-3-3-2 in the OSBA.
Use
2-3 or 3-2 in the OSBA, and the kickback and negativity that surrounded the use of the zone this year in that league.
That's a touchy one.
So I mean, and I think this started back in November. We won the annual Henry Carr deal, and you hop on Twitter and you get all the feedback about, you know, how we won and sitting in the zone, and you got athletes, and well, okay, Syracuse, Jeremy Grant is 6'9", man, he's a hell of an athlete. Tyus Battle, hell of an athlete. Carmelo Anthony, athlete. Like the list goes on. Like,
does it come down to just do what you got to do to win at that point?
It comes down to your philosophy, it comes down to your teaching style. Like it comes down to how, and I think that people try to take this away, but like basketball is a fun thing that allows your mind to go wherever you want it to go.
Yeah.
And I think every coach should have the freedom and the space to be able to do that. So if I deem that my team, because again, I'm the one with my team every day. Like I know how bad of a defender, of a man-to-man defender he is, or like my job isn't to like get them exposed because the guy in the stand says that you should be playing man. Not that that's our case, but at the end of the day, like I'm the one that spends and we're the ones that spend the time with them to know what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they're working on, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And you know, we got a lot of kickback from us using the zone here.
That's why it was interesting. That's why in kind of show one, I think let's get that off our chest.
But it's funny how you watch as time goes on. Teams that I heard that never went zone. Yeah. So it's like, and you watch college basketball, like a lot of more people are running 2-3 zone now. The way that Syracuse and Washington plays it. I was watching Michigan and Texas A&M from last year, and Texas A&M out there in the 2-3 tagging wings, and so it's like, you know,
it's
like
a strategy.
You can say what you want, but
shoot me for making an adjustment as a coach.
I also feel like every system is based on the personality of your team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we're talking about our program here, you know, we got Tyrese Samuel, Joe Jones, and Matthew Alexander on our bottom line. Just the length and the amount of space they cover, you know,
and all three guys athletes
makes it pretty difficult to get a good look on the perimeter aspect of it. So I think everything's based off personnel as well.
Changing speeds here. A lot of changes in the college basketball landscape. I know we don't want to dig into specific changes or decisions that were made, but what is the impact when you look, and I think, I don't know if Mark, you could pull up or figure out what is that total number right now. I know Manny, we've been kind of keeping track of it in here, sending.
It's like plus 15.
It's definitely north of 15. I know that.
23, right?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Somewhere in the 20s. What's the impact? Obviously, it's huge impact on the college basketball landscape when you have 23 jobs available at the head coaching level. But as players, sitting in that locker room, your coach has been fired. You pick that school. Do you pick that school first of all? And I'll go to Manny with this one. Do you pick that school because of the name of the school? Do you pick that school because of the coach? Do you pick that school because of a combination of both? Because I feel like there's a huge gap when you lose the guy that actually spent time to get to know you as a person and build trust with that dude, and he's now gone. How do you look the next guy in the eyes knowing he's out trying to find guys to replicate and build that relationship that you had with someone that's no longer there? How does that impact these guys sitting in these locker rooms? And what's the overall impact when you look at 23 programs times, let's just go 10 players,
Right.
230 players impacted right now?
Right.
What does it do?
I think you kind of touched upon it. I think the biggest thing is trust right there, because I think kids do pick on a combination of both. Obviously, a great staff and a great institution. But as a parent, when you're letting your son go, you're kind of putting the trust in the coaching staff that recruited, the son or daughter. And so, thinking back to, and as a player's shoes, you trust the coach, you have a relationship with the coach, and then once they leave, it's like almost like a void.
Yeah.
It's almost like a void left, and you just hope that, whoever comes in accepts you as a player first,
Yeah.
Then as a person.
All of a sudden you're looking for that acceptance. Where do I get it from?
Is your first thought, I'm transferring? Or is it, I'm going to see who comes here first? Or is it both, all at the same time? Jay?
I think it's a combination of both. I think if you're at a certain level, you're smart enough to understand that they're probably going to get somebody that the world deems good. If you're at a school that's like that big, to where they got somebody good in here, at least let me see who it is first, versus somewhere where you probably really went there because of who the particular person was who recruited you. Because at the same time, these coaches are hired because not just the only thing, but recruiting is one of the things that gives a coach value on the staff into a university. So if that wasn't the case, then you could go send the secretary in the admissions office to go recruit the kids then, if it's just about presenting the same fact that we have this population and this many students in this building and that building.
Are we putting too much emphasis on the fact that there's that great relationship with every single player or your players on a team? You've been in Division I locker rooms. You've played. You've been in Division I played. What is the relationship level, or does it really depend on school by school? Like, are all these guys saying, man, I'm sad to see him leave, or is the locker room somewhat divided, saying, yo, I'm happy this dude gone now, and the other guys are saying, nah, I'm not?
I don't think there's an absolute in anything. I think, but for the most part, I think majority of teams go to places for the coach who recruited them. Now your feelings toward them after you done played for them for a year or 2 or 3 years, and like they're
change.
They're 18 to 22-year-olds. So it's amazing what I was thinking from 18 to 22. So it's like, but I would assume that the majority of their thought is, they feel a ways about their guy leaving, which is why we can get on Twitter right now, and even yesterday, like it felt like everybody was transferring yesterday.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy.
I mean, you just look at college basketball landscape, and I know we started off talking about like college changes or coaches changes, but when you're looking at those players in the locker room and you're looking at it, I mean, there's so many feelings that you go through the course of a month, a week, a year, including, you're sitting there doing visits, bringing in a guy that might be replacing you and trying to kill you for your playing time, and you got to manage those emotions of ups and downs. You got to trust that coach who's putting you there to recruit this guy still's got your back, but at the same time has the expectation. How much of that did you see go through, and how much time, and kind of to both of you at the Division I level, how much time is spent by those coaching staffs trying to reassure and make sure that these guys are in a good place?
I think a lot of time's invested. I think back at Oral Roberts University. Coach Miller used to do a great job of always making time off the court to meet with their guys, whether they were managers, whether they were GAs, whether they were freshmen, sophomores, best player to last. Coach Mills made sure he spent time with everybody in that program to build that relationship. Because I feel like that's what it comes down to. They say a player won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you can be the best coach in the world, but if the players that feel like you love them and you want the best for them, I just don't know if you're gonna get their absolute best on a day-to-day basis. So,
Coach Hop sitting in Washington locker room.
I remember Hop vividly always talking about how his first recruiting job was with the kids that were already on campus. Calling Noah Dickerson and David Crisp and Matisse Steibel, who's now the Pac-12 all-time steals leader, and Dominic Green, who hit the game-winning shot against a ranked Arizona team last year.
He had to re-recruit them.
He had to re-recruit the kids that are already there. Cause these are talented kids who had the opportunity to go play at several universities in the nation. And there just had to be a level of trust. There's this great area of just trust that Coach Hop had to do an amazing job of filling for them that allowed them to stay, which then, from that point, they've been to 2 postseasons. Well, they played Friday against Utah State. So, without him getting those guys to stay, who's to say at Washington sees a tournament or not?
Absolutely.
So.
Player's perspective. You're sitting in that locker room, and the dude that you spent 3 years with, now you're going into your senior year, he's gone.
I think it's a little bit of mixed emotions. Like for some players, not everyone is going to connect with their coach, and not everyone, I think, touching on what Manny said, is going to respond. Like there's I think kind of 2 sides to coaching. There's you're either going to be a hard-nosed kind of guy, or you're going to be a real understanding individual, and still have that hard-nosed component to it, but you're more of the loving kind of coach. You understand, you show a lot of empathy and sympathy towards your players. But I think, for example, me and going into my last year at Humber, we had a coaching change, and it was a tough adjustment for all of us.
Why do you think I just asked you this question?
But no, like that's what it was. Like for us, we were. It was kind of funny. Like guys that were used to the guy that was coming in as our head coach. He was an assistant for I think 4 or 5, maybe 6 years prior to getting hired as the head coach. And guys loved him in an assistant role. But once he got to a head role, the dynamics changed, and he only really rocked with the main group. And the guys that were 8 to 12 or 14, kind of in the roster, which I was in that mix of, we kind of got forgotten. And the funniest thing is we were some of the hardest workers in the gym, period. And we were the guys that wanted to get in the most work in and showed interest. But sometimes we weren't getting that interest back, at least from a head coaching perspective. Our assistants showed us the love, but our head, not as much as I think some players kind of need. Because like I was saying, what I started with, a lot of players either will respond to a hard-nosed coach, or you're going to lose them real quick. I think kind of, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the same kind of thing happen to Negus when he committed with Louisville, and then the assistant that recruited him, if I'm not mistaken, or got fired or let go, whatever the case may be, and then that's how he ended up at Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was at Missouri.
Missouri. Oh, sorry, yes. But there's more to the story, obviously, but that was kind of what happened, right? He lost, like, the guy that recruited him that he was, like, close with and, had that trust, what Manny talked about. All of a sudden he's gone, and then you're kind of like deer in headlight moments, like, who do I look to?
Yeah,
who do I have? And most of the times it's just yourself.
Shout out Negus, because he was hooping there, too,
Yeah.
and should have been a lot better off at Missouri than what he was. And, but last little thing, obviously with 24, do we have that final number, Mark, or is it even? We're gonna call it 24.
First off, shout out Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, shout out Mark.
Mark over here setting up and doing everything for us here.
That's our guy.
Yeah, buddy.
You got to flip your camera around so they can see. You can't keep it on us. But to any college coaches out there watching, it's this is my shameless plug, but we got some coaches sitting in this room waiting, and you know the number, hit it up, and there's a lot of changes out there, and we're willing and ready for them changes, bro. But last but not least, ending on a really good note, because obviously, I mean, when you start talking about college changes, this impacts a lot of people's lives. We sit here and just talk about this guy's gone, this guy's in, this guy's out. That impacts families, kids, everything. And I don't want to get into that, but like, man, what other job do you really ever come home from it and be like, yo, I just got fired, and everyone's like, it's okay, you'll get something tomorrow. Like, it's basketball. It's pro sports. It's like, if you don't get fired, you're not doing your job at that point, really. And it's a shame, because I don't think anybody sits there and thinks of the impact that not only it has. We sit there and talk about transfers and talk about entire coaching staffs that are going to change, but these are people's lives we're talking about. And we can't take out of the fact that, they make a lot of money in doing it, but you know what? It's still a reputation, it's still a responsibility, and it's still, families and kids that they have to sit down and have these conversations with. So there's a lot more that goes into it on the human aspect and the human side of this thing too.
Yeah, and I think, just to add to that, like, there's this platform called CoachSpeak.net that I wrote a piece for recently, and the platform is built for that exact thing. Like, again, like, we get on the ticker and we get on Twitter and Instagram, we see like these coaches getting hired and fired. It's like, oh dang, he got fired. Like, yo, he got fired. Like, he has a wife at home. He has kids. He has, like, he's been living in a house for X amount of years. Like,
he's built a whole network of family and friends and donors and boosters, and he put his heart and soul into those programs.
It's like, you got a neighbor that you've been living with in some apartment complex that works at Farmers Insurance, and they get fired, and you like, dang, like, really? Like, that's the same thing. Like, and I think because coaches, salaries
how would the person working at Farmers Insurance like to come home and turn on ESPN and say, Sally Jane, who was the cashier, was just fired from 41st Street. Right. I don't think people look at it that way.
The general public puts they put their comfort in the amount of money that they assume that coaches make.
And we're gonna elaborate a lot more on that in terms of social media impact, dollars and cents with athletes, and what abuse and social media abuse. I think that's a good topic that we could put forth in some of the next ones, because I think people automatically assume because you make millions, you're open to
things get lost
criticism and racism and personal opinions. So that's for another day. That's for maybe next Wednesday. I think that's a longer discussion. But March Madness is upon us. Lots of good teams. Lots of I don't know if there was any real shockers in terms of teams left out. I think this year they did a pretty good job of looking at it. I think there really was an emphasis, in my opinion, on the mid-majors and really trying to appreciate their level of competitiveness and willingness to get out there and play and reward them for playing big games. We're going to go around the table and just kind of talk your Final Four, your champion, and if you want to elaborate a little. I'm going to start with Pat.
My Final Four, I got Michigan State battling against Gonzaga, and then I got Tennessee going against North Carolina. I got Michigan State. That was a school that, for me as a young basketball player, even now, like, I still dream about, if I got a chance to, go and play there. So I got Michigan State winning this. My reason behind it was probably just alone their second half comeback against Michigan. They outscored them 42-29. And I think, certain guys like, Winston, is it Cassius Winston, who's been, playing phenomenal basketball. You got a senior like Nick Ward, who's been there for a while and knows the culture and really is a huge leader in the backbone, I think, of that team. And then, Matt McQuaid, who can shoot the crap out of that basketball. So I really think that they have a good chance of making it all the way and hopefully winning it. I'd like to see them, make it all the way to the top. But my one team, I don't have them going to the Final Four, but one team that I really like is ISU. I really think with guys like Lindell, Mariel, who's a Bounce alumni, and then Horton Tucker, I think that they're a big problem. They're a tough team. Obviously coming off that win against Kansas, that was huge. So I think alone just off of that win, they should have a lot of momentum going into the tournament, and I think that they're going to be a sleeper team.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty cool to see Michigan State win it, considering they were sitting in our gym recruiting some guys this year, and shout out Dave Thomas, Brampton, coming up here and recruiting the local Toronto kids, and Michigan State's always been a school that's done a good job recruiting the Toronto area. So, Jay Pope, what you got? Final Four, and as a side note, y'all going to be there, getting to watch this thing play out in real life, which I think is a pretty cool thing. So, I'm going to be FaceTiming you, telling you that your pool sucked. I think as you're watching it in real life. Go ahead.
So,
what up?
We're going to be at the NABC Final Four convention, which I think for young coaches like us three at least, is very beneficial. I went last year for the first time, and it changed my life, to be honest. So shout out to the NBC. But I do like how the brackets played out. Like Belmont lost to Murray State in the conference championship, but they still awarded them based on their resume. And we seen last night that they belong to be there. They beat Temple by like 8 or 9 and had his runs, and they were there. And Rick Byrd is a legendary guy. We actually played against them last year at Washington, so I know firsthand what Belmont looks like. But in my Final Four, I have Duke. Oh, one more thing I want to add. Tony, you've been doing this for a long time, but I can say I got a kid in the tournament. So shout out Kihei Clark, freshman guard at Virginia. So I've been coaching for about 6 years now, and for me, it's I have a kid in the tournament is dope. So I know 20-something years ago when you could say that, it was dope to you too. But so shout out my guy, Kihei.
It still is. Every day you turn on that TV, and I think I tweeted it out a while ago. It still amazes me to be able to turn on the TV and watch guys that you grinded it out in the gym with, excelling and playing. And as a young basketball player, one of your dreams, and for most of their biggest dream is to play in March Madness. And then the next biggest dream is to play in the NBA. So I think you're taking a step towards that by being somewhere on this bracket. And just to be a part of this, you're achieving.
Yeah.
But my Final Four, I got Duke, I got Gonzaga, I got Tennessee, and I got the winner of the second round of Carolina and Washington is going to be in the Final Four. So that's where I stand. I think.
In other words, he didn't want to make a choice.
I think
my
Final Four, especially with I think Zion and RJ are just two, like they're just different.
Yeah.
Gonzaga is a phenomenal program that Mark Few runs, and then I have Tennessee in the Final Four, and they're just tough. Like I just like their brand of basketball, and
I fell in love this year, especially. They're a close knit group, and we got to go see them in person, and watch them up close. And through the game, you could just tell they love each other.
Yeah,
like they really truly do.
After they came back against Kentucky in the semifinal SEC tournament last week, Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, and Lamont Turner, they were interviewing, and all three of them made a point to let it be known how much they love each other. And me being a man of faith, like the way they showcased their faith on national television as young men was something that it was special.
Loved it.
It was special, and we're fortunate to be in a situation where we have close relationship with their coaching staff. So talking to the coaching staff, he's like, man, like if there was another set of 3 guys up there, you would have felt the same way. Yeah. So, like, knowing some kids, not knowing them like that, but we have a kid at Tennessee. So, knowing, like, the group that our kid is around and with every day, and that's just the makeup of how they get down, like, you just have to love a team like I just, so.
And so, who do you have winning it?
I got Gonzaga winning it.
I just had to go back there because you were trying to avoid that question.
I got Gonzaga winning.
Coach Hop going to pick up the phone tomorrow morning.
Fortunately,
what happened to Go Dogs?
Fortunately for me, Coach Hop is such a realist. Like he'd be like, man, that's a good choice. Like they're loaded. Like they have Rui, Zach Norvell, Josh Perkins. Like they have kind of a bit of everything.
I'm going to go on to Manny's list, and we all got ours all the way done out, and Manny's is in Braille. It's in Braille.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. What you got, big fella?
Absolutely. I think my Final Four for this year is going to be Virginia, North Carolina, Texas Tech is kind of my sleeper pick, and then Michigan State. I think with the early exit that Virginia went through last year, I think Coach Benson had his guys ready to go.
Yes.
And then moving on to North Carolina, I mean,
They're
for the past
out
few
no matter
years,
what.
it just feels like, they just get it done. Just get it done. And you still got Luke May in the mix, great point guard and Kobe White. So I think they're going to find a way to get there. And then Texas Tech, I think Chris Beard's done a great job. And they also want to share the Big 12 this year. They shared with K-State. And so I think Texas Tech's going to be good, especially on the defensive end. They play tough, they play gritty. And then, I can't leave my guys out at Michigan State. I think they've done a great job fighting adversity all year. Even like last night, not last night, a few days ago, like Kyle things went down as well. So battling injuries, all the adjustments they'd have to make all season. They've been losing guys like Nick Ward and obviously Izzo, all-time great. So I think those are my Final Four, and I don't know who's gonna win it all, but I'm excited to learn first and foremost, and excited to just watch it. Some great basketball.
Absolutely. My Final Four, and it's funny because Mark made a point when we were sitting here filling it out saying, are you going to pick all players that played for you before, or players that came through the program? And it's hard because when you really sit down and look at this and you're trying to be unbiased, my Final Four I got is really, North Carolina, I agree, is over the years has played a great brand of basketball, and they're North Carolina. But I'm going to go against them, and I think, I still hold a grudge from a couple years ago when they beat Oregon on a missed box out and a couple bad referee calls. I'm going to say my guys at Iowa State are going to step up and really give them a run right now, and I think they're playing good with like you said, Lindell and obviously Mario. He's hooping right now, and changing from Virginia was a big risk. You're leaving a great coach and a great program, and he's gone in there and been able to be himself. And I think he's playing the best basketball I've seen him play, and he's free. So I got Iowa State there against North Carolina. So I have Tennessee against Iowa State, which again you could say I'm biased, but
you never know though. It's
Kyle Alexander and Mario there, and I have Duke and Michigan. I think Michigan's going to be a tough out here. I think
they are.
Iggy
really
right
like
now is you see everything all over social media as he's the villain, and if you look back at the narrative of many March Madness tournaments, there's always that guy that becomes the villain, and he's taken that and he's running with it. So I have Duke, Michigan, Tennessee, Iowa State, and I have Tennessee winning it in the end. I think it's going to be a really tough game, but again, my heart tells me to go with Tennessee due to the fact that they're so damn close, and I'd love to see Rick Barnes win a national championship after leaving Texas, going to Tennessee and building that thing from the ground up and seeing it happen before my eyes.
With 3 stars.
Yeah, with guys that weren't heavily recruited, and Kyle was one of those guys who had a ton of talent and Rick Barnes saw something in him. I'd just love to see Kyle win it in his senior year, and Rick Barnes take a program from a rebuild to a national champion in 4 years. That would be huge for me. So that's there. Last thing, I think this has been great. I think it's been fun sitting around the table.
Hold on real quick, Tom. I don't want to cut him off, Mark. But so as far as March Madness goes, I got 2 questions. I've personally never been to an NCAA tournament game. I don't think
I have.
Okay, well, Pat has.
Yeah.
I haven't. Okay, well,
I actually got to watch Steph Curry play against Mario Chalmers when it was
so
Kansas versus Davis.
So fortunately, is my question. So I haven't been to one.
Yep.
So in this loaded question, what is it like the atmosphere, et cetera, being there, and then go into the notion of when they're my brothers now, but your sons Tyler and Dylan, and that whole with Villanova and Syracuse supposed to play each other, but X, Y, and Z happened.
So a couple things. My first tournament games obviously were with Dylan when he was at Villanova, and then when Tyler got to Syracuse, it was actually a crazy time because we sit there and we watch Selection Sunday, and it's amazing to sit there and understand everything that happens behind the scenes from a parent's perspective of you're actually sitting there with your iPad or your laptop saying, okay, what region are we going to be in? And then all of a sudden you're racing to try to book tickets to get there, and the prices are going to be jacked up the minute they do that. So it's like mixed emotions, and luckily for me, the year that they were both playing, it worked out. I don't think it could have ever worked out any better because Syracuse got Buffalo, Villanova got Buffalo, and so for me, we went. The first round, both teams won.
And it's close to y'all. That's the crazy
It's
part.
an hour and a half away. We literally could have slept in our own bed and went back to tournament games, and so the atmosphere as a parent it's crazy, and it's so many mixed emotions in terms of you just know that this, And in a couple of the cases, like, it just could be some people on that team's last game. So your seniors are there, and the emotions, and you see their parents, and they're sweating and grinding with every
Speaking
step.
of emotion, I can't imagine what Susie was going through.
So
Shout out to Susie, man.
tripping.
So I mean, the first round games were
Mommy,
were
what
great.
up?
Everything was perfect. They both won and went to the next round, and Tyler was up first, and they lost and had a chance to win it at the buzzer, and I think they lost to Dayton, and
that was the year they went far with
Deshaun Pierre.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you look at that and you say, oh man, you get up out of your chair and you go down under and you want to talk to your son, and in that case we kind of knew too that was Tyler's last college basketball game. And there was decisions, we knew at least there was like really strong decisions to be made, so there's emotions. And Tyler's not a guy that really cries or anything, and you could see him leaving the court. I think the hardest part was hearing the story after of like Villanova coming on the court and Syracuse leaving, and those two seeing each other, and Dylan seeing Tyler crying going off the court, and Dylan trying to go on the court making sure he don't come off crying. And you have that. So I go back up into the seat, and now Villanova's playing, and then they lose. So you kind of have both your sons lose back to back within like a 3.5 hour window in the exact same arena. So you're blessed on one hand to like be able to not have to pick and choose where you're going, but then you're just both done, and it seems so empty at the end of it. Like, okay, what you thought was going to be okay, even in the next round if they split up, Susie, I think at the time, Susie, you're going to Milwaukee and I'm going to here, and you start making those plans because you have to. It's just so last minute. You got 3 or 4 days to get to a whole different city and a different set of things. So it was good. And then when Dylan transferred to Oregon, it was really cool to see it kind of play out all the way through to the Final Four. And that is.
With even more of your kids on that team.
Yeah, with even and not even just my kids. Dylan Brooks was there, and it's you start to see like a whole different level of preparation, a different level of like excitement in the hotel. The hotels are the best, where you just got everybody there, and then the Final Four is just, the Final Four is just a whole different level. The only thing I could say about the Final Four, it was in Phoenix that year. It was. I just felt like the place from a college basketball perspective. When you go from a school like Villanova or a school like Oregon Syracuse is a little bit bigger of a stadium. I just felt like everything was so spread out, too big and too far removed. Even though at the Oregon game I probably had the best seats in the house. I think I was probably coaching the team, yelling from my seats, but I still felt like I was 10 miles away from the action in terms of what we
just lack the intimacy.
Exactly. So
what was it like that year when they played each other? Because every time I walk into your office, and Mark, you would probably put this picture up of, I believe, Dylan's guarding Tyler.
Yeah.
So I catch that picture every time. I kind of was like, man, like, what was that game like? Where they're both going head to head.
I think it's. As kids, they grew up, and it was always just a dream to play college basketball. When they were growing up, it would be like turn on the TV on Saturday, 12 noon. It's a Big East champion or Big East game, period.
Yeah.
And you say, man, one day I want to play there. And so for them to both A, play college basketball, and then B, have a chance to actually play each other in a real college basketball game that meant something, it was tough. And going into that game, it was like everyone would ask you who you're going to cheer for. Who Man, you cheer for both. Yeah. And if you go back to that game, I think Villanova in the first half was up 20, 18, something like that, and you're like, man, they're really kicking their butt right now. And then Syracuse came flying back and took the lead, and you're like, man, they're getting their butt kicked now, and there was everything you could ask for. One team up 20, one team down 20, the next team come back and take the lead and go up 20 on the team that was up, and at the end of it, you just kind of sit there and say, as long as both dudes just go out there and hoop, I don't really care what happens. And we had T-shirts made that was just like, it was both.
I feel like Sue had like a half Nova, half orange deal.
Sue, we had shirts that were like,
on the back.
It had Ennis versus Ennis, and the V was Villanova, and the S was Syracuse. So it was like,
that's dope.
It was kind of like
cool. Who came
both.
up with that?
I don't know if it was Dylan or someone, but
Probably
Dylan.
It was Dylan.
Knowing Dylan, it was probably Dylan.
So
he probably made it himself, to be honest.
So it was, it's crazy. So, shout out all those parents that are going through this right now in terms of like enjoy this. And that's one thing I said. I shared a text message with Claude Nemhart yesterday, which is Ryan
Ryan and Andrews.
Andrew's dad. And he's gone through obviously the ups and downs of college basketball, but I just said enjoy this.
Yeah.
Like sit back and take in every minute of it, because it happens so fast and it's not guaranteed. And with what Andrew had been through and the ups and downs the family had been through in regards to, his ending to his high school is like, this is so special right now. Just take it all in and like embrace it and appreciate it and be able to share that experience the same way that I am now. And I mean, I hope to do it another 100 times with all our kids, but 3 more times with my kids especially, and then grandkids after that, hopefully. But it truly is a blessing. It's something that you could just look forward to. Last question around the table, just so people could kind of get you. I speculated on this. The last song you played.
Run Me Dry, Bryson Tiller. That was the last song. That was in my bag.
The Soul by Reason.
Man, I think I was working out and I have to play a throwback. Ayo Technology.
Oh, man. That's why you were singing it before we started. Oh, my God.
I'm having to go throwback. So.
Y'all say bye to Manny. That'll be his last appearance on the show.
For real.
You're never having him back.
It's better than what I thought he was going to say.
I'm not really a music guy,
Tom?
but
I think mine probably, coming into work in the morning, especially when, you're doing the show, and I love getting together with everyone in here, and that's why I think it's so important that we do, Pat's energy and the debates we have in here is like, I think I listened to 6ix9ine all the way here, and
I'm shocked it wasn't Tory Lanez.
It usually is Tory Lanez, but today was 6ix9ine, and it just kind of gets me fired up, and
That's funny. Speaking of Tory, though, I be laughing every time. I forget what song it is. I think it's Keep in Touch. He's talking about the 401 in Yorkdale. Like, for being from LA, it's like, knowing what he's talking about is dope.
Yeah,
like,
well, a lot of Drake's music is like that. A lot of Drake's music he refers to like Toronto streets.
I was telling somebody,
the song too, Western Road Flows, right?
I was trying to think, like, if somebody's not from here,
Now,
do they really understand?
I always said I wanted to do this. I wanted to get a bus and start a bus tour. So OVO, good idea to do. Start a bus tour, and you just play the Drake songs and go to each spot on this bus tour. So it could be like, Weston Road, Kingston Road, and go to a food spot, or go to here, go to this that's in that area, and show like where the thoughts and the provoking thoughts came from for each of those songs.
That'd be crazy.
Oh, for sure. I like that when I hear Kendrick Lamar's music and he mentions Rosecrans. It's like, for me, like, I know what Rosecrans is for sure. It's like, but hearing like Drake, even like Drake's themes of his albums, it's like, it's like, so hearing Drake's themes of albums for all these years, like the Caribbean, splash he throws on all of them, like, did Drake just decide that he just want a Caribbean splash on his music? And then being here and now in the culture and realizing like, oh, that's really what it is out here. It's like, this makes so much more sense. Like,
after you came here, does every Drake song seem to make more sense
it
to you
makes
now?
so much more sense. Like, even like stuff that we don't say that y'all say that I now know what it means. It's like, oh, I know what they're talking about. Or like, like, that's probably really his man's. Even though Drake sounds like
so
really
if you had to tell
Jamaican.
everyone back in Compton right now, if they said, "Yo, Jeremy, what are you talking? What would a Toronto slang be that you know what it means now that you wouldn't have known back there?" Because I find it hilarious when I go, I spent some time in LA, and you hear guys, singing out Weston Road, like, man, they don't even know where that is. Like,
exactly.
The way I know we don't use cheese. The way you guys use ting.
We're talking about the water bottle deal yesterday.
The water bottle deal. So
the whole flip deal?
So one of my players came to my room one night asking me he said, can I get a water bottle? So I'm like, and I have a case of bottled water, like on my floor that he sees. But at the time I'm thinking he wanted a water bottle. So I'm like, yeah, you can have just a water bottle that's over there, an empty one. So he's kind of like, all right. I'm like, all right. So time goes on, maybe a week or two goes by, and he's like, Coach, like, you did me wrong. I asked for a water bottle. I said, I did give you a water bottle. He was like, no, one of those. I said, oh, a bottle of water? And he was like, it's a water bottle. I said, no, we say bottled water. So when you said water bottle, I thought you meant an empty water bottle. So,
So you gave him an empty
I gave
water
an
bottle?
empty water bottle, and he thought I was the meanest coach in the country. So, yeah, it's, just the difference. The difference is definitely, it makes way more sense to me now.
Good. Well, I want to thank you guys for
Thank you, man. Thank you.
for putting some thought into this and sitting around chit chatting. I think it's been a good morning. Anyone watching, if you do have any ideas, any things you want to hear or want to ask any of these guys, myself, any questions, go to the YouTube page and under the comments or hit us up on DM or IG, and we can integrate some of those questions into the show moving forward. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in, or anyone that is going to watch this on Apple Music or Spotify. Appreciate the support, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
We out.